I was fortunate to have been in some roles that really resonated with women, that, without planning it, became significant to women, like Thelma and Louise and League of Their Own. And it gave me a really heightened awareness of how women are depicted in Hollywood. Something that I hadn't paid that much attention to before. I was getting good parts and I thought, oh, things are improving, whatever. But it really struck me how few opportunities we give women to feel empowered by the female characters in films. So I paid attention to it ever since then, really making choices that I thought women would appreciate, not role models, but be something that they could hang on to. So with this heightened awareness, I had a daughter 12 years ago, and when I started watching little kids shows with her, G-rated videos and things, I immediately saw, I think because of this, that there seemed to be far more male characters than female characters in what we're actually making for little kids. And I didn't intend to take it this far, to launch an institute and all this, but I found that nobody else was noticing. And in fact, when I asked people within the industry what they thought about it, they all said, every single person I asked said, that's not a problem anymore, that's been fixed. So I realized this is something people really aren't seeing, because I didn't expect to find it in kids' entertainment either. I assumed, well, things are messed up in general, but I'm sure they put a lot of thought into kids' media. But it wasn't the case. So that's why I ended up sponsoring now the largest amount of research ever done on gender depictions in media, covering over a 20-year span. And no one had done research at all on the subject before, which also shows that people weren't thinking about it. In G, PG, and PG-13 films, for every one female-speaking character, there are 3 male characters. If you look at the crowd scenes and group scenes, both in live action and animated, there's only 17% female characters. 17%. So in the fictitious worlds that are being created for them, whether it's an outer space colony or an undersea world or a magical kingdom, the population is only about 17% women. So what message is that sending to boys and girls from the beginning if the female characters simply aren't there? And forget about the fact that they're also, our research showed, highly stereotyped, hypersexualized, very, very often, even in G-rated movies, and have very few occupations and aspirations beyond finding romance. The reason we did the research was I had the idea that since I'm in the industry, I can go directly to the creators. I know everybody and share the research with them. And I was hoping that would make a difference. And it's had an enormous impact. Every place that we've gone to present it, we go to networks and studios and guilds and production companies. Every place we go, their jaws are on the ground. They had no idea they were leaving out that many female characters, that the worlds are virtually bereft of female presence. And very often on the spot, they say, we're changing our next movie, we have to rewrite that, we have to go back to the drawing board on that. So we know that we're having an impact. A number of movies have come out now that we know we impacted, and we actually did a survey of everyone in the industry who's heard the message. And 63% said it had already impacted 2 of their projects, and 41% said it had impacted 4 or more of their projects. So we feel certain that when we update our research, let's say in 5 years, the needle will have moved for the first time. You have to hit all sectors of the film industry because decisions about gender are made at every level. There's the studio head who might need to have a policy about this. There's the studio executives who shepherd it. You have to hit the directors, the writers, the casting directors. You also, the editors, how much screen time do the female characters have? You also have to talk with the assistant directors, because right on the set is when the decisions about crowd scenes are made, where they're the ones placing the extras in a scene. And if their task is to set up a boardroom, let's say, they're probably going to, just by some default thinking, have it almost all white men and a couple of women and maybe a couple of people of color, but mostly white men, where our suggestion would be, mix it up, make it half women. Who cares? It's going to have an unconscious effect on people, but consciously they're not going to say, hang on, there's too many women in there. So it's every level you have to get to. We judge our value to society by seeing ourselves reflected in the popular culture. Oh, there I am, I must matter, I see somebody like myself. So what message are we sending to girls if they're hypersexualized or sidelined, or their function is to be eye candy, or if they're simply not there at all? We're saying girls aren't as important as boys, right? And boys pick this message up too. If they're not there, we're saying girls don't take up half of the space in the world, which is a very bad message, and it's sinking in. The more hours of TV a girl watches, the fewer options she thinks she has in life. So it's a very powerful message. But we could turn it around. If we send the opposite message, girls do take up half the space. They do half of the important things. They are valued for things beyond their looks. That's just as powerful in a positive way. When boys watch TV, the more they watch, the more their self-esteem goes up. So we could do that for girls as well. Well, there are certainly more opportunities for creating content now. There's so many different platforms, and certainly for people who aren't in the industry to make videos, get them on YouTube, get them online. It's very easy, and women are particularly drawn to the internet, to social media. It's a way to have your voice heard that we haven't had before. So I think that's all very positive. The fact is that kids 11 and under still, by far, watch TV. So they watch videos on TV and they watch actual television. So that's why we're focusing on film and TV right now, is because we want to change what they see first. We don't want to create problems that we have to solve later. If we could change that from the beginning, I think it will help a great deal. I mean, if boys and girls see kids sharing the sandbox equally, won't that impact how they grow up to think about each other, right? We're able to get to everybody in the industry, and we've had tremendous contact with the studios. Most of them we've been back multiple times. I think I've been to Disney probably well over 24 times, because they always think of some new division that I haven't spoken to yet. But we have met with Amazon, DirecTV, YouTube, Google. We've met with all of these companies, and they are very, very keen on this topic of gender diversity. We've partnered with them. Google gave us a really large grant to help us develop software for our research. So they're all over this, and especially YouTube has just been talking with us about really wanting to make a push to get more female content creators. So there are vast opportunities, and it could be that they're a little more light on their feet and forward-thinking, youth-oriented. So I have a lot of hope and positive feelings about how this is going. One problem we've run into, though, is where if I was to ask studios to make more movies starring a female character, I would run into resistance. In that situation, this overwhelming belief system in Hollywood would kick in, which is that women will watch men, but men won't watch women. So it's out of our hands. We have to make the movies star Tom Cruise or whoever, because women will watch it, but men don't want to watch women. And they assume that it holds true with boys and girls as well. It's actually not true. It's been proven by research not to be true, but they believe it. So I don't say, make more movies starring women. When you do, that's fantastic, and cast me in the part. What I say instead is, whatever you're already going to make, don't have to change a thing. Don't worry about it. Whatever it's about, whatever it is, just before you cast it, go through and change a bunch of first names to female names. And right there, you've created a lot more female characters who are probably very unstereotyped because they were written for a man, might be kind of refreshingly interesting now that they had a gender change. And wherever it says a crowd gathers, just put comma, which is half female. Because otherwise, I guarantee on the set, it's going to end up around 17%, which they don't want. I've had people write at a meeting, it was an animation studio, and I told the part about 17% in crowd scenes, and the head of the studio looked around the table and said, guys, because it was all guys, can we just get rid of that right now? Can we all agree right now that we're going to have 50%? They were like, yes, of course. We don't know why we were doing that. I really couldn't have predicted what their reaction was going to be. Were they going to say, so what? Or does it matter? And at that very first presentation, their jaws were on the ground. The head of the studio had her head in her hands. It was a woman. She said, how could I be a woman and I have a daughter and I never thought about counting the female characters? And so it was great. One of the male directors said, I'm the problem, because he started realizing, the work that he'd done was pretty bereft of female presence. A program of the Institute is called See Jane, as in the children's books from when I was a kid, See Dick, See Jane. We see a lot of Dick, we just don't see enough Jane. So we've made these videos. Actually, we had 5 different colleges make videos in this series called Guess Who. And basically, they find 7-year-old kids and interview them. And they say, describe what a mathematician looks like. And show clips of the kids. And invariably, whatever the profession, pilot, baker, they describe a man. They say, well, he wears glasses. He has pencils in his pocket. He wears a lab coat. And then they say, well, would you be surprised to learn that the mathematician is a woman? And I swear the reactions are like from the 50s. Like we had to dig it up from last century because they go like, what? Or one of them says, no, that's not possible. You're like, oh my God. Already at 7 years old, you have this incredible gender bias that only boys can do certain things. So, and then we introduce the woman, and so it's been a really successful and great series, and we have curricula that goes with it that we can send out to schools. We actually just last fall released the first ever global gender in media study that we sponsored, and we looked at 10 territories throughout the world. Brazil, the UK, China, Japan, etc. And found that the picture isn't really any less grim around the world. There are certain countries that are doing better in certain areas. South Korea, for example, 50% of the lead characters are female, which is, it's 11% in the United States, so it's fantastic. China, 40% of the characters are female, whereas it's only about 28% in the States. So there are certain areas where countries are doing better, but in general, the picture is about the same as in the United States. And what's really troubling is when you look at occupations, they don't even reflect the small progress that women have made. For example, lawyers and judges in global film were, male to female was like 15 to 1, whereas in the real world, it's much, much better. In a political office, in real life, 21% of politicians in the real world are female, which is not great, but it's 21%. And on film, it was something like 2%. So they can't even claim, filmmakers can't even claim, we're just reflecting reality. Sorry, it's so much worse than reality. The most interesting thing to me was that the UK does pretty well. You know, they're pretty far up there in the rankings. But we also looked at UK-US combinations. We drag them down to the lowest. We have the UK-US collaborations have the lowest percentages of female and the worst representation. The United States is by far not leading the way. We're not the bottom, but we're much closer to it than we would ever want to admit. So that's, you know, we really got to step up our game. 80% of the media consumed worldwide is created in the United States. So we are to a large extent responsible for exporting a very negative image of women around the world.